Good evening, everyone. We are reconvening to open session at 5:35. In closed session, the board took action to issue a notice of non-reelection and release to one probationary teacher pursuant to Education Code Section 44929.21B and 44954B, effective at the end of the 2021 school year, and directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notices. The roll call vote was as followed. Motion made by Richard Lopez and seconded by John Swigard. Ham, yes. Lopez, yes. Swigard, yes. Valadez, no. And Trustee Pickle is absent this evening. Do I have a motion for action on student disciplinary cases number 2 and number 4?
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so moved. We're on.
Thank you, Richard. A second?
In need of a second?
Julio or John, could you give us a second on the disciplinary cases?
John?
Actually, John's not on, so
You can second.
I'll second the motion. So, Mrs. Rohrer.
I need to call for the vote.
I need to call for the vote. Thank you. Bear with me. I'm not nearly as practiced and polished at this as others. And I also am not sure I'm logged into the meeting. Well, I'm a yes, Leslie.
Okay. Has anyone heard from Mr. Swigard?
No.
You got it.
No, I haven't heard anything. I'm gonna put not president, but. Okay, it passed 3 with 3 votes with Mr. Swigard not present.
Okay. I don't know if everyone heard that. It passed 3-0. Mr. Swigard and Mrs. Pickle are not present. Okay. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mrs. Rohrer, would you mind muting us?
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? I second the motion. Call for the vote.
Okay, it passed 3-0 with Mr. Swigard not.
Okay, pass 3-0.
I'll go in and change the, roll call so that his name doesn't show up.
Okay. At this time, we will hear public comments submitted. Are you going to read them, Mrs. Rohrer?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm just going to change put the report in front of it. Yes, Vice President Ham, we had 80 comments that were, oh, I'm sorry, that's for the budget. So yes, I will read the general public comment. This comment was submitted by Mario Mendoza. It says, "Dear board members, my name is Mario Mendoza, a longtime resident of Livingston. My comments today are in regards to some decisions in the governing board. First, I'd like to begin with Superintendent Peterson. Mr. Peterson, you claim that the MUHSD is a district with equal opportunity when it comes to employment. You claim that one of the LCAP goals is to retain teachers. However, that is questionable when you hide under the umbrella of firing without disclosure. How can you proclaim goals and dress up the LCAP goals when your actions show otherwise? I do not want to know the reasoning of all non-elected employees, but how can you stand by your word when your actions show something different? Watching the board meetings, I have come to realize that the board is split up into different groups. Those who look after their own interests and forget who elected them to that chair, and those who try to do what is best for the community. For example, Mr. Lopez is evident of how much you manipulate the board and its decision-making for your own personal agenda. Mr. Lopez, do your job. Reflect not your own ideas, but those whom you represent. I will make sure I partake in the upcoming WASP review so that they can look into all these questionable gray areas. Our community has awakened, and we are keeping a close eye on all your actions. We will not be silent, and we will make sure all of you do the job you were hired or elected to do. And then there's one other comment made by Jose Moran. Mr. Moran says, my public comment is in regards to students not being able to participate in sports in the fall if they are not able to meet the 2.0 GPA requirement by then. What this means is that probably half of our students that were able to participate in sports in what was left of the spring semester will not be able to participate in the fall because of their grades currently being affected by the pandemic. Their struggles to make ends meet, home responsibilities, and etc. The district and Mr. Peterson have always been what I believe advocates of students in sports. We all understand how important and the role that sports plays in encouraging students to come to school and be engaged. Taking this away from this group of students will not only be inequitable, damaging, but also detrimental. Based on what we see in the spring semester, many of these students will be affected with these students primarily in our special groups, homeless students, ELD, and special needs students. We as a district and as a community need to help those students overcome all of those daily barriers that they face, and we cannot and should not add another barrier ourselves. Instead, we should provide special consideration and attention to ensure equal opportunity for success. These students must be provided support that will ensure they have equal access to education resources and opportunities. It is only fair that all students have the same opportunities. Please consider and give all students the opportunity and offer at least the first quarter of the 21-22 school year to make up their grades and qualify for sports.
Thank you, Mrs. Orban. Okay, we'll now proceed to item 9.01. Dr. Weimer.
But you have the,
Sarah, about the budget.
oh,
At this time, oh no, you're going to give us a report before we open for public hearing, correct?
Maybe. Good. Okay. So this
should look
familiar?
So we
So
do have.
we do have the,
Is the mic on there?
Mute.
all right,
All right, let's try this one more time.
you got it.
Better. All right, the slides should look familiar. They match the ones that you see several times each year. So this would be for the 21-22 budget. One of the things that we'll note here is we have continued to see an increase in ADA and enrollment. So we are still up, even through the pandemic, when most of California was going down. Our enrollment numbers did continue to go up. We are going to be watching that, though, to see if that holds. We have started to see some students who moved here at the beginning of the pandemic starting to move away. So that could affect our numbers a little bit as far as enrollment is concerned, which of course then is how we're funded on the ADA. So if that number slips a little bit, then we would see our budget slip a little bit. If it continues, then we're in good shape. The regular components that we're used to seeing, the LCFF components for the budget, you can see the total of funds estimated there is $135 million. And then if we get to the revenue assumptions, we see that we're going to be receiving a 5.07% COLA. That includes 2020 and 2021 and 21-22. So it's this year and next year, but none of the money is coming to us this year. It all starts next year. We see that we are looking at the ADA of 10,400, and you can see the lottery and then the COLA. LCFF is the COLA on the LCFF funds. We are not receiving 5.07 on things like Title I, CTE funds, and those types of things. We only saw 1.7% COLA on those other funds. Things that are not on here for the revenue assumption because they have not necessarily happened yet. ESSER 3, we have not received funds for ESSER 3 yet, so that is not reflected in this budget. So that will be coming in probably in September. So we will have those information for you at that time. We will have to do an ESSER 3 project plan, so we will be bringing that to you at the beginning of next year, and that will talk about the ESSER 3 money. So it is not in this particular budget. That's estimated around $30 million.
What is ESSER 3 for those of us not?
ESSER 3 is the rush money that the federal government passed back in the beginning of the year. And it was such a rush that we still haven't seen it yet and won't see it for another month or
It's
so.
the COVID money.
Oh, it is part of the COVID funds.
Is the in-person in this budget?
Yes.
And ELO is also part of the budget, okay?
Two things that are also of note that are going on. The legislature has passed their version of a budget. They're now in negotiations with the governor. They have till the 15th, so next week, to actually come to an agreement with the governor. This is based on the May revise from the governor's budget. So things might change based on how the legislature and the governor's negotiations go. One of the things is deferrals, and I'll talk about that one when we get to it in just a second. But the other two are two pots of money that they're talking about that could become ongoing pots of money. So one of them is giving us money every year to extend learning, so increasing the number of summer school days, making sure that we're open till 6 o'clock in the evenings, and possibly doing Saturday school. So if they give us that money, that would be ongoing money for those. We're using the in-person learning and the expanded learning opportunities money for that now. They might give us money that's ongoing to use for that specific reason. And then the other one is they might increase the supplemental or concentration. They're not sure which yet. That's part of the negotiation. Again, that would become ongoing funds. And the purpose behind that would be to bring down the adult to student ratio on campuses. So we would have discussions, if we get that money, on how we would hire more staff. That could be more counseling staff, more paraprofessionals, more teaching staff. But it would have to be used on more staff, and it would be ongoing so that cost would be covered. So those are two things that are being discussed. We won't know though until next week how that matches up. So on the 21-22 revenue, you see that we do have the LCFF money, federal income, state money, gives us a total of the $158 million. So again, that includes the COVID funds that we've received to date from both the states and the Fed, but does not include the ESSER 3, which will be coming later in the year. And then you see the big bump, which is semantics, of the $18 million to the 176 total. That's us borrowing for ourselves because in the May revision for the governor's budget, deferrals were still there. So they were putting off payments, and we have to cover our bills. So we're borrowing from ourselves, and that's where that $18 million. So we're not really getting income of $18 million. We're borrowing it from ourselves, which we have to pay back. So this does give you the expenditure assumptions. So it does have the 1.5% for step and column, and then you can see the amounts that we're putting into other funds here. This budget would return us to pre-COVID staffing levels. So all of the things that we were talking about last year as cutting would be back into the budget. So we're back to full strength on providing extracurricular activities, Schedule B stipends, back to the sections that we were out before last year's budget. It would include SROs. All of the things that were in the budget pre-COVID are back into this budget, included into this. It also then includes the ELO plan, which we passed in May, which was Saturday school, after-school professional development, hiring a new para at every campus, and the Sierra Vista counselors, which the contract is on the consent agenda for tonight. So those are included in this budget, as well as anything that's in the LCAP presentation that will be coming up after this particular presentation. That is all included in this as well. So we can see the budgeted expenditures. We have the 171 million. Then again, the 20 million down there at the bottom, like we said on the other, is paying back ourselves. So we have the money that we have deferrals that we get to count in, but then we also have to turn around and put that money back out. So we borrowed it on that previous slide, and then we give it back on this slide here. The next 2 years with deferrals and one-time grants will be the most confusing budgets probably ever, and then we will start to get back to some normalcy on the budgeting process. So on the general fund summary, again, you can see the major difference in that revenue from 2020 to 2021 is all of the one-time grants. And that includes grants that were already spent this year, so the money that we had to spend in the fall, the in-person money that was already spent. But it also includes ESSER II monies and the expanded learning opportunity monies. So we count them as income in 2021, but you don't see them as expenses until 21, 22. So things carry over. You see the income 1 year, the expenses don't happen to the next year. That's why you see, if you see excess revenues over expenditures, you see a positive number for 2021, and you see a negative number for 21, 22, because we're getting the money in 2021, but we're spending it in 21, 22. And then again, the transfers in and out have to do with, mostly with the deferrals. So the ending balance, and again, as you see 2021, you see a restricted balance of the 23 million. Again, a large part of that is going to be money that's paying ourselves back and money that's from the grants that has to be carried over to the next year.
Can we talk about the reserve,
We can.
or do you prefer to talk about it later?
We can talk about it when you like.
Well, I would be a proponent of increasing our reserve at this point. We are getting a lot of one-time money, some of it which we're able to use for expenses that we would otherwise incur, and I would strongly advise the district, encourage us to also add to the reserve at this time, because we haven't seen money like this in a really long time, and we know times are going to change at some point, right? And I, I was not here, but I don't, Richard, you weren't here either. I don't think you were, Julio, but, during the last downturn, I know it was paramount to the board to have, and the district to have money in the reserve to keep everyone employed. And as we just saw, COLA is going up, so we're going to need more money than we needed before. So that's something I would like to talk about, or maybe you want us to wait and leave our comments at the end.
I'm perfectly happy taking them where they're at on the slides. It's sometimes easier that way, but I can take them at the end too, so either way.
Okay.
2 notes on that. The first one would be, this is only half of our economic reserves. So we do have in Fund 17 another $5 million that is for economic reserves, and it will actually go up. It's probably going to be $7 million this year because we keep a 10% reserve. So part of it is here, and the other part of it is in Fund 17. The other part that is going to be interesting is the way in which the budget comes out will most likely be triggering a very, hasn't been used before, piece of the state law, which is going to limit our unreserved economic uncertainty to 10%. So because the state has so much money, part of the proposition that got us to that point put in a limit. So if we hit that point, you can only have a 10% reserve for economic uncertainty. We can have money set aside for specific purposes, but we can't have it sitting there with no purpose, which is what the economic uncertainty is. So we can increase the amount that we have set aside for specific purposes to use somewhere in the future, but we can't just leave it blanket wide open.
There is a waiver process with the county for that, so we can explore the avenues.
So Dr. Weimer, with that, with the 10%, would we then, so I guess there's a date at the legislature, right? That's coming. So could we take action then to increase that before that hits, or is it gonna be capped at 10% no matter what? Okay,
If you have it, you have to give it back.
Unless you have a waiver,
unless you have a
for
waiver.
good reason.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And again, when we're talking about economic uncertainties, that's money that's not identified for any purpose. So if we're putting money into the facilities fund for facility uses, or into the transportation fund to replace vehicles in the next 5 years, that's not part of economic uncertainty, that's not part of the 10%. But just having 10% unaccounted for and just there to use, that's the 10%.
And I'm sure we have a slew of things that we could start to look down the
We
road.
are
So, okay.
starting.
Mr. Weimer,
Yes.
is this an amount that we've always had, the 10%?
We've had the 10% as far as I can remember.
Okay, this is the, I'm sorry, the 10% is what helped us be able to not lay off people when everyone else was doing it, correct?
Well, actually, in 2009, it was closer to 15%. And that got us through almost 3 years. I think the board had to make very difficult decisions in that third year. So yes, it makes a huge difference.
And yes, when we were talking about cutting between 8 to 9% of our budget, possibly, when we were at this point last year, we weren't going to have to lay off a single person at that point because we have the ability to cover that for a year or two.
Okay, so an increased amount, maybe 12 to 15 would be best, but it has to be approved, correct? It would be best to have a 12 to 15% reserve.
Well, I don't know if
If
you heard
possible.
what Dr. Weimer just said, which is that the state may be limiting it to, you can't have more than 10 in this bucket. You could put it into others, or facilities or transportation or things of that nature. But we could try and get to 15 now, and if the state, and we could also try and get the waiver through the county. So,
Yeah, we'll bring back different opportunities that we can look at in the fall.
good deal.
And that would not, the cap would not trigger until 22, 23, so it's not next year, it would be the following.
Okay.
So this kind of gives you a little bit better perspective on where we really are. So you see that for 2021, 21, 22, and even if you look at the increase or decrease in 22, 23, that's all of the distortions from the one-time funds and the deferrals and the borrowing and paying ourselves back. As you get out to 23, 24, you start to see what our normal budget will start to look like again. And you do see that in 23, 24, we do run a $1.7 million deficit in that particular year, but we have plenty of time between now and that point. If our enrollment continues to go up, that deficit will disappear. And if it doesn't continue to go up, then we have a couple of years to identify where we would trim the budgets back a little bit to make sure that we're at a balanced budget by the time we get to that year. So you can see that, while yes, it looks like we have $46 million just sitting there this year, we don't. That's part of the deferrals as well. And so a large part of that goes to paying ourselves back into our other funds. And then we also have the one-time funds that have to be paid down over those 2 years. The assumptions for the outgoing years, you can see the increase in the LCFF funding for the 2.48% COLA for 22-23, and then the estimation is 3% for 23-24. You can see STRS rate levels off a little bit, but PERS rate goes up just a little bit. One of the ones that's not in here, but I am going to mention it because it is an increased expense to it. We are hoping that the legislature wins part of the battle. The governor's proposal for unemployment insurance this year has us paying $40,000 this year. Our unemployment insurance bill for next year would be $1,040,000, and a $1 million increase in the cost of unemployment insurance. The legislature is proposing less than that, only $500,000. So it is going to be a large increase to us to fund that unemployment insurance, but hopefully it's less than what the governor proposed.
Yeah.
They give us money here and they give
They give us money on one hand and they take it back. They said part of the reason that they increased the COLA to 5.07 was because we were going to have to pay that bill.
So that's an allocation we can make then for that uncertainty, aside from the reserve.
You could,
It's $1 million hit.
yes.
Could be.
This year,
Yeah.
It's also something that we could use the ESSER COVID funds for because it is a COVID-related expense.
Gotcha, okay.
So you think it's a one-time, like, it's this year or next year or whatever, but it's not the year?
I'm guessing it's 2 to 2.5 years, yeah.
Hmm.
But again, we're hoping the legislature's going to win, and we'll see how soon that gets back to a little bit more stable. The issue is that they gave out so much money, they have to build the funds back up, so they're trying to do it quickly rather than do it over time. As we move into our other funds, these are just our normal ones for every year. Adult education is not ours. We get money for the consortium for adult ed, and it just gets spent. It just kind of passes through our accounts. The Child Development Center is at East Campus, and that's something that we fund every year. So the money goes into this fund for the Child Development Center. Food services, most of the money that comes from food services is from meal reimbursements. But we also do contribute about $1.5 million to help offset those costs every year. And then transportation, you do see that we're putting some money into transportation every year again. We replaced a lot of buses, but those were only buses that did not meet air quality standards and had to be replaced. It did not replace all of our 20 and 25-year-old buses that still have 300,000 miles on them. So we do have more buses that we do need to replace, and we still need to replace about 40% of our white seats. So you're going to see that in the budget for the next couple of years to start a program to replace those on a regular basis, so that in about 6 years, we would be at a point where we don't have old buses or old white seats, and we have a rotation plan on how to keep out of that problem. Deferred maintenance, you'll see funds that are in there, and again, that can be used for a wide variety of maintenance types of projects. Fund 21 is the bond fund, so as we spend those projects that were identified by Mr. Calderon in the previous meeting, that would be coming out of the Fund 21. Fund 25 is developer fees. Those can be used for areas where we have growth, so things like new classroom buildings and different things like that. But again, it has to be based on growth. Fund 35 is some modernization funds that just have to be left over here real quickly, and we'll be using those for some facility projects coming up. And then the special reserve for capital outlay, this is the money where the settlement is, so this is where we're borrowing the money for our deferrals. So you see that the money goes down to nothing, but then you'll see the next year when we get to 22-23, money will be put back into that account that we were borrowing to pay our bills. The legislature is proposing that we not have deferrals at all, so this money might not have to get taken out of the account to cover that this year. It might just be there for projects once that settlement is all taken care of. Fund 17, and again, this is where the other half of the economic uncertainties are. So we do have money available in that. OPEB, we are putting money aside in there, and that is to pay off the PARS programs that we already have. We have 2 PARS that were outstanding plus this year's PARS. So this money is able to put that aside so we can pay those off and not have to take them out of the general fund every year. And the last one is the interest that we have to put on here. It's not ours, but the county makes us put it on here anyway. And we are a positive certification, so next week when we bring the budget before you, we can pay our bills.
Dr. Weimer, based on the ADA history, and I know you based it, the 21-22 off of the 10,400 kids, correct?
Correct.
So is there a rationale why we went so high on the projected ADA when in the previous years it's been like, say, 150 to 180 students, and then this year we're projecting in next, about to get more?
It's actually a two-year increase because we did not increase this year. We actually did increase this year, but because of the hold harmless that the state passed, we did
Right.
not get to count extra
Right.
money, so we stayed at that level. So that growth is actually a two-year growth, not a one-year growth.
Gotcha, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Before we have too much more discussion, we need to open the public hearing. And let Leslie take it away with public comment.
So you'll open the public hearing at,
Yeah, I need to open the public hearing at 6:06.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ham. We did receive 80 comments that were about the proposed budget. All 80 of them were very much the same except for a few variations. So I am going to read the comment, the first comment that was submitted, and then all the names that submitted that same comment, okay? So this comment was made by Claudia Cristel Cortez Servine, Lizandra Arcio, Jaylyn Cruz, Anna Quintana Sejas, Jocelyn No, Nayeli Zhang, Julian Zhang, Sandra Zhang, Lanzong Mua, Emily Exo, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Jay Arziega, Beline Delgado, Jose Magno, and I, Mauer Fuentes, Cynthia Macias, Aiden Mondo, Natalie Marino, Christy Marquez, Eugene Vane, Christina Acosta, Mai Yang, Kassar Thao, Jerry Rivera, Amanda Lynn Ricon, Fernando Galvin, Ha Naya Yang, Jackie Santos, Adriana Loza Gonzalez, Aquino Westmoreland, Diane Alvarado, Clarissa Segundas, Bethany Diaz, Daniel Garibay, Bridget Bain, Thomas Mua, Christine Castro, Diana Mua, Des Marie Jackson, Akula Bain, Jamina Quintana Sejas, Lex Kong, Kiri Zhang, Ulysses Zambrano, Solomon Yang, Kalia Cross, Hajai Erie, Brown Newsom, Catherine Bain, Jennifer Zhang, Jocelyn Perez, Abel Francisco, Chloe Chow, Jason Yang, Jocelyn Ortega, Lucy Bain, Perla Telez Zarati, Jose Garcia, Angelica Rubio, Kylie Lee, Sung Cheng, Josiah Justy Tao, Nathan Abel, Marco Yanes, Celia Von Bolton, Miranda Zhang, Jasmine Say Chow, Bella Mua, and Elena Yang. And again, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. And the comments they submitted was this: I support the Fund of Futures campaign because, first and foremost, we appreciate all the work that you are doing during this difficult year. We urge you to prioritize new investments for the academic support, success, and wellness of low-income English learners, foster youth, and students of color who are the hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. The American Rescue Plan funding can be transformative for Merced students and their families who have the right to a just recovery and debt-free future. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many of the inequities that have always existed in our county. In 2019, Black students in MUHSD were 3.8% of the student population, yet they had the highest expulsion suspension rate in 2019-20 at 6.4%. We are also aware that the student-to-counselor ratio is 351 to 1. Student-nurse ratio is 1,503 to 1. And student-to-psychologist ratio is 2,105 to 1. School-based social workers are non-existent, and teachers, liaison, and other school staff have had to take on additional responsibilities to cover this gap. We urge the Merced Union High School District to protect our young people by investing in equitable youth and community development through the American Rescue Plan. Specifically, we're making the following recommendations with a particular and specific emphasis on English learners, foster youth, and low-income students of color this budget cycle. Invest $10 million to support academic success, mental health, and wellness of all MUHSD students. Retroactive, universal passing for seniors and individual student plans. Invest in student lounges at each high school with a long-term plan of school-based health centers. Hire 9 school-based social workers to support students. Paid summer youth engagement opportunities for students. And establish a scholarship for Black students. In addition to the funds we're requesting, we would also ask to assert that no federal funds be used for punishment in any way, meaning no costs on campus. In Merced County, we have a chance to build a new chapter. We can't go back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rohrbach. We'll close the public hearing at 6:12. And open the floor for discussion. So, John sent a message. He had an emergency and he had to hop off. So, Julio and Richard.
Yeah, a question on, they talked about the seniors graduation, I believe. I think that was one of their asks, right, or requests, for 2021. And we talked about this, I think, 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
How many seniors did not graduate this year?
Well, I know there were 4 at Golden Valley. It was not real far off from our normal numbers.
Gotcha, okay. And those students that did not meet the requirements or did not meet the graduation, did we reach out to them as to maybe why they didn't take it, or did they reach out to us to have that?
Oh, yeah,
Discussion with you guys?
constant contact, yeah.
Okay. I know that was part of our discussion, 2 months ago.
I mean, there were a couple of students at every campus that just kind of fell off the map
Okay,
and didn't want to complete. And there's always a couple non-completers. They try, but, don't get there. But very few of our sites are ever at 0.
Right.
And so Golden Valley is the only number I know for sure right now, because I talked to the counselor at graduation, so that's a pretty good number.
can we get that accurate number for by next Wednesday?
Sure,
Or
if
just
you
no.
if you give me a few minutes, I can dig into
Oh,
my,
oh,
my,
sure.
I did ask every site to provide me a list of students that, we're gonna qualify for the waiver.
Okay,
And I think, well, there was only one campus that had full number of 7, everything else is like 2, anywhere between 2 to 7, so it was really insignificant, and there were incredibly compelling reasons why, the students would qualify for the waiver. Most, if not all, the students, senior students, are attending summer school, or, the site did an incredible job catching up to seniors. So there weren't nearly as many as we thought. So the site really did do an incredible job. But if you give me a few minutes, I can share those notes with you.
thank you.
On every site.
And I also think a lot of the asks from the email, or the comments, they're being addressed as part of our plan moving forward. So we're hoping that, we're not gonna wait till the American Rescue Plan money comes through. We're gonna move, start progressing now with the funds that we have allocated to us to start to address those needs for students as they return back to school in August, so. And continue in summertime, so no, thank you guys very much.
Well, in the consent agenda tonight, is a contract agreement with Sierra Vista for more counselors for our campuses. So that's something that maybe the public won't be terribly familiar with, but that, it's 3 counselors, which is not 9 that they're asking for, but, it's a good start, and that's regardless of the act, what do you call them? The rescue, American Rescue. Yeah, fund our future, so.
And
All
then
right, go
the,
ahead, Julio, if you want to say something.
Well, I was gonna say the same thing you just did. You know, one of the things we mentioned earlier too was, if we had provided similar, services and the demand was not there. So this is why we're starting with 3, and we'll see if more are needed once we get going with this next school year. But if we do need more, where would that money come from?
This year's current budget does not include the money they're referring to. That's the ESSER 3 money. So that money will still be coming in to us in the fall to be able to have conversations about. And then we also have the 2 areas that the governor and legislature are negotiating right now. One, which would be an increase of supplemental and concentration funds, which means we would be needing to hire more people on a permanent basis, not a one-year basis. That's the problem with the federal funds, is they're one time, and we'd have to let them go when that money ran out. Under the money that the legislature is looking at, we might be able to hire some more people that would be on a permanent basis. And then the other one would be their extended day and extended year, which would allow us to offer more services too, both of which would be ongoing funds. So it would be much more stable than using one-time funds.
But with temporary or one-time funds, we talked about this also. We could possibly hire more people, or not really, maybe not hire them, but contract some people, or more counselors, or whatever clinicians we need. And then with the caveat that they will know it's temporary while the funds are there. Is that something that we can do?
Yeah, and part of the ELO plan that was approved at the last meeting has us doing analysis of what the needs are at the beginning of the year and then again at quarter. So looking at how many students are behind on credits, how many students are having issues with grades, how many students are not involved, how many students are seeing counselors, and what our ratio is, and how those kids are being served. And if not, then we can use those funds to increase those services. So we already have mechanisms in place for that right now, and then we do have the ESSER 3 coming in, and the other money that we talked about from the legislature that would be able to increase those services if we find a need.
Just remember, every district in the
Right.
valley is doing this,
Yeah.
and there's going to become a capacity issue at some point.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we were able to jump on this quickly. And if we need to ramp up, we will find a way, but this is a highly impacted area.
I think that when we talked, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of us agreed that these group of students and alumni have some valid points that we're actually, some of these things are already happening. Some may be able to happen, but in what way can we, maybe the superintendent and some of us, I don't know if we can all meet at the same time, but meet with them and see, because there's some things that we may not understand exactly what they're saying, and there's some things that we may not be able to do the way they're asking. And I value their feedback. I think we all do, especially the students coming directly from students. So I think maybe we talk to them a little bit more, meet with them, and see what ways we can help the students, and then also let them know of what services are available already, so that the word can be spread and they actually use the services. Because like we mentioned earlier, some of these were available, but there was no demand for it. So we got rid of them. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so how could we do something to meet with them, or who can meet with them? How would it be in
Well,
another board meeting or separately?
Yeah,
maybe?
I have met with them. I know Richard has met with them. I mean, we can follow up, after next week's meeting and, you know, let them know where we are. That's no problem.
Okay, but what I'm asking is like, hey, can we as a board meet with them or somehow, or does it have to be? I know we don't want to violate the Brown Act law, but how can that be done?
I don't think we can in groups of more than two, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they have submitted a lot of really good information, I think. Richard, did you meet with them recently?
Yes, like I think about a week and a half ago, a week
Okay.
ago.
Did you meet with them also, Julio?
Yes, we met online. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Well, anyways, I mean, like we also, I think they do have some valid points that we should, you know, be willing to look at and see what else we can do to help in, you know, in some areas that we're able to do. I'm trying to read it again, but anyway, so we all have read most of the emails and have seen what they're asking. And I know that we can't do everything, but at least listen to them and see if there's areas that we can improve on.
Well, they asked us to invest $10 million to support academic success, mental health, and wellness of all Merced Union High School District students. And I think we're doing that. And some, right? Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, maybe not every bullet or checkpoint, but some good topics to discuss further, certainly. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Weimer. It was very well laid out. Was there any further discussion on the budget? If not, then we will move on to the LCAP presentation. Costa, Dr. Aguilar.
Hello, and thank you. Give me 1 second here to share my screen. Where should I go? Okay, you know, before I get started, I do want to give a big thank you to Director Cheryl Garman, who was the pin for our LCAP this year. It's the first time that she's gone through and authored and pinned the LCAP and did an excellent job. So a big thank you to Cheryl for her work on this year's LCAP. I also want to extend a big thank you to all of our stakeholders who attended all of our stakeholder meetings for LCAP. And I also want to highlight all the students that attended. Appreciate all the comments here earlier. You know, student voice is very important, and there were a lot of students that attended this year, you know, during those LCAP meetings. So again, a big thank you. Secondly, before I jump into the LCAP, I do also want to emphasize what Dr. Weimer has mentioned about our extended learning opportunities budget and that money. A lot of what has been historically put into our LCAP is being funded now or will be funded through our ELO because it is one-time money. It is money that we do have to spend in a certain amount of time. Perhaps there are some elements or some concepts or some actions and services that you perhaps may not see this year in the LCAP. It does not mean that we are not doing them, but they don't need to be funded because of those ELO monies that we do have. So I just wanted to lay that out and make that clear. I do have our 4 goals here up on my screen before I get started, and want to make sure that everyone understands what the 4 LCAP goals are. So all students, college and career ready is goal number 1. And then in green, you will see school climate, recruit, retain staff, highly qualified staff, and then equitable access. Those are the 4 major goals that we address in the LCAP. Next, I can find this document. So if you go into your board docs, you will see that attached is an executive summary that I'm pulling up here. I do want to again emphasize all the different feeder districts, the different areas that we serve. One of the complicated parts of doing the LCAP is we do serve 3 different communities that are vastly different. We have our demographic groups there with updated data. So you get an idea and a really good sense of our student population and those that we are serving. Our LCAP cycle went very, very well given the circumstances. We did have really good turnouts this year, via Zoom. And then moving forward, I think that we are going to keep elements of Zoom meetings along with in-person meetings just because we get greater participation. Now, down below, around our LCAP highlights, these are the 5 areas that were condensed from our learning continuity plan that we adopted, that our board here adopted last year. And we previously had 8 goals, which we condensed into 5. The first area that is the LCAP highlight can be found on page 4 and 5 of our LCAP. I do want to make sure everyone has access to it and is looking at that page 4 and 5 because those areas will definitely highlight in detail all of the areas of focus for this year. So as you look at strengthening connectedness, you see there in detail what we will be doing along the lines of making sure that students are reconnecting and re-engaging with our school. We want to make sure that as we get back to our normal school year for this upcoming year, that we make sure that we're continuing to provide all of the opportunities that students had prior to the pandemic. And that doesn't mean just with athletics and activities and clubs, but the opportunities that students were having throughout our CTE programs, for example, and those work-based learning opportunities and those internships and those hands-on opportunities that all of our students got. So there, when you talk about strengthening student connectedness, that's what that means, right? We want to reconnect our students right back to, our teachers and our staff and those programs that they love and they go to school for. Next, looking at the, move this around here. Next, if we're looking at our professional learning, we had a goal in our previous LCAP for this last year around culture responsive pedagogy. And one of the questions was, what happened to it? Where did it go away? And no, it did not go away. But we did put it under professional learning because that's where we can support it with our budget, and that's where it's best served this upcoming year, as we want to ensure that our teachers are being trained and our students are receiving different services, through culturally responsive pedagogy or universal design for learning or project-based learning, and then also a nurture heart approach to address our social emotional learning. So all of those are falling under professional learning because those are training opportunities that we want to ensure that all of our students receive. The third item, the third highlight is around pupil learning loss. And you will see there with the pupil learning loss that we want to emphasize the 7-period day. There is ample opportunity for all of our students to get the classes that they need and get the help that they need to get students back on track. So when we look at that pupil learning loss concept, we want to take advantage of that 7-period day that we have, along with the assets programs that we have after school. And then we will also go back to the Saturday academies that we had prior to our pandemic, where we had staff, teachers, and students on our campuses working on projects, working on a variety of different club events, those additional opportunities that students don't often tend to get throughout the school day. And then also summer school, and I'll be providing you an extensive report on summer school and the way that's going this year outside of the scope of this report. Our fourth goal is around technology and connectivity. We've learned a lot over the course of this last year. We've learned the hard way. And, I do want to go back here, and I remember Ms. Ham asked a question maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and your question was, what have you learned now through, or what is that services, what are the schools, what are your teachers have learned now through this pandemic? And quite frankly, the question caught me a little bit off guard because we were right in the midst of it. And, through myself, kind of processing through, what we were going through, I said right away, well, we're learning how to pivot, we're learning how to, adjust and really be nimble. But, really looking at the pupil or looking at the technology and connectivity, one of the things that we've really, really learned is the power and the impact, face-to-face interactions and that social emotional piece, that we've missed. We were moving in the direction of technology and how can technology really support, everything that we're doing. And now we're going back and saying, gosh, this was great. We learned the hard way to do Zoom and to teach through Zoom and try to connect with students. But really the power of having students in front of us and interacting with one another is something that I think we took for granted. So that I think is probably the biggest thing that I've learned. And if you talk to a lot of our teachers and staff on our campuses, we're not going to shy away from technology. We're gonna still use, like I said, Zoom and take advantage of certain opportunities. But man, I think we all took for granted, being able to get together, having face-to-face conversations with one another, the power of having that teacher right there, and the proximity, just being able to look at the expressions on students' faces or the teachers' faces, as they're learning. I think we took a lot of that for granted. So that's a lot of the learning that we've done. And technology is still here. We still want to support our infrastructure. I know Director Garman has some great ideas and is going to move that department forward. But we want to continue to support, the infrastructure that we have. And as we look at different opportunities to serve students, we're still looking at opportunities to better connect students, not just through MyPies, but through other methods as well. And lastly, goal number 5 under student meals, we've continued to provide student meals. I think one of the biggest surprises for us is we were doing this before the pandemic even hit. So the shift wasn't really as big for other campuses or other districts, or for us as it was for other districts. So I think, that was incredibly powerful. And again, it wasn't a big surprise because this was something that we were continuing to do. So under those 5 areas, there are page numbers specifically that identify each one of those services. But I also want to highlight a comment that was made earlier by the group that had numerous comments. They're asking for increased services for foster youth students or English learners, and really our socially, economically disadvantaged students. And on pages 24 and 25 of our LCAP, you're going to see a lot of different services that our student groups that were just mentioned are going to get and are receiving. So I think a lot of times we ask, we want this for students, we want that for students, but I don't think sometimes we understand that in a lot of instances we're already providing a lot of those different services. Now, can we always improve on them? Yes. But I do want to highlight that, and those services, again, can be found on pages 24 and 25. Those services include, again, the 7-period day, providing student meals, what we're doing at our Child Development Center. Research-based best practices with social emotional learning. We're looking through right now a curriculum that we're going to implement for next year and looking how we can better provide surveys to our students so that we can get even better data to share with all of our stakeholders. Our culturally responsive pedagogy, our universal design for learning, our project-based learning, and our nurture hard approach. Those are all items that we were working on, with the exception of perhaps maybe our nurture hard approach. But these are all items that we were working on prior to the pandemic that, again, this is going to be part of the big reset that you hear Superintendent Peterson talk about. But again, it's getting back to that culture and getting it back into that mindset, this upcoming year. Those are the areas of the LCAP that I wanted to share. I wanted to make sure that, people in our audience or stakeholder groups could find these easily. There are page numbers that have been shared with everyone so that they can easily find where these actions and services are being laid out. Lastly, as I mentioned, there are 4 goals. The first goal, you can find actions and services on pages 10 through 13. For goal number 2, you can find actions and services on pages 14 through 17. And on goal number 3, you can find those actions and services for pages 18 through 21. And then lastly, goal number 4, pages 22 and 23. And then those pages, you will see more specifically the actions and services that I just mentioned, along with a budget that goes along with it. So with that, I'll open that up to questions here from our.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar.
board
Before
members.
we have questions, we need to open the public hearing, which we'll do at 6:37. And Mrs. Rohrbach, I believe there is a public comment.
Yes, there is. This comment was submitted by Estella Dunn on behalf of the Black Parallel School Board. And she says, the Black Parallel School Board proposed several LCAP recommendations that directly address the needs of the district's 2 lowest performing student groups, African American and English-speaking Latinx students. Note, student group performance is in no way reflective of the deficiencies in the students. The Black Parallel School Board's recommendations are referenced in the 2021-22 LCAP. We are hopeful that, as the district administration has assured us, those recommendations will be implemented with the same intentionality and resolve as the Black Parallel School Board's actual recommended language. If so, we are confident that the district will be moving in the direction that will allow for improved outcomes, not only its 2 lowest performing student groups, but other student groups, such as the LGBTQ+ as well. We commend the district for including LCAP actions meant to help African American students. However, we would like you to know that historically, when plans are made to expand educational opportunities that will impact most students, African Americans are left out or benefit least in the actual implementation. We ask you to name African Americans in actions related to the first Black Parallel School Board's recommendation, as you similarly name ELs and foster youth in actions that are critical to their needs. Thank you.
That's the only comment. So we will close the hearing at 6:39 and open it up for discussion.
Dr. Aguilar, as far as Yosemite being a CSI school since 2019, is there a timeline that they have to not be considered a CSI school? I mean, as far as, I know that they're doing that nurture hard approach, to support their students, but at what point are they no longer a CSI school?
I'm going to defer that to Ms. Garman or Mr. Johnson, who worked with Yosemite and through that process.
Hi, yes, good evening. I have here in the plan that they're currently in year 2 of a 3-year program. So they're in the midst of working through those services and supports.
So what happens at the end of, I mean, are we monitoring some sort of data along this 3-year plan to ensure that we are making these growth?
Yes, on page 7, there's a section specific to monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of the plan. So it's detailed there for you.
Okay, and then, as far as the 7th-tier day, I know it's called out in this narrative. So that decision that we made a couple years back to go to a 7th-tier day, I think it's working for our kids. It's given them those opportunities to, to access classes that they would not be able to access, and I know in particular back when I started was our EL population was tied into an ELD block and did not have access to these extra classes that they could be taking. So I applaud, that it's being called out specifically here, as far as an increased service in college readiness for kids. But I think it's important that we continue that avenue and allow our kids to continue to have access to all the other courses that they may not otherwise in a 6-period day or whatever that may be.
Yeah, and I respectfully will comment on that and say, to anyone who, sees the 7-period day as invaluable, I think they really need to, and I say this again respectfully, I think they need to take a look at our college and career indicator. If you look at the number of opportunities our students currently have now under this new schedule, and data supports, where we are, and if you look at our college and career indicator, look at DataQuest and look where we are, and in comparison to other school districts, not just in our valley, but throughout the state. We are providing an enormous amount of opportunities for our students, and we're excelling, and only increasing the opportunities and making the system even better.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you, sir. And addressing Mrs. Dunn's comment, when we talk about some of the measuring, and maybe not so much an action, but more like a measuring tool for us, for these next 3 years, and then establishing benchmarks or just what that may look like at the end of the year, like the percentage of students being suspended or being expelled, and I know we're targeting, the African American population because they're the highest, the smallest subgroup, but the highest suspended, So if we look at the 0.1 as the baseline, is that the actual baseline of all of our kids at MUHSD is the 0.1% that are suspended?
Correct. And, it's something that I did share with our Merced Black Parallel School Board, and I'd like to share with all of our stakeholders is, we do have a new position with Katina Austin taking that program administrator position that will be working with Director Torrin Johnson. And it's important that all of our stakeholders understand that both Torrin and Katina are going to be working with the site administrators and coaching them on strategies and looking through the data regularly to ensure that students of color that are historically disproportionately suspended are not being suspended. So we do have a system that's already going to be put in place and a lot of coaching for administrators, for that. And through that coaching, we have those opportunities and we have the programs in place to support the students.
And on some of these desired outcomes, I know it says increase or decrease. Are we not going to tie numbers to the outcomes at the end of the 3 years?
I think it's important for us right now to take a look and get good baseline data for this upcoming year. We can look at data for, last, 3 years if we want. And we know that it hasn't been good. But now, especially with our reset, I think it's going to be important that we look at all the behavior for all of our students. You got to remember, we have students that have not been on a campus for almost 2 years. Freshman students that really didn't get that freshman experience, and even current sophomores, didn't get a complete year as freshmen. So I think it's going to be a very comprehensive look at behavior, expectations, and a lot of coaching that Katina Austin and Torrin Johnson will be doing with all of our administrators.
And last question, and Cheryl, thank you for the work on this LCAP. Obviously, I dived through it just to make sure that that certain things are being called out. When we talked about like just another measuring tool as far as the academic is concerned, can we include a measuring tool with our new benchmarks that we're going to be piloting as far as ensuring that our African-American groups and even our I don't know, our Hispanic kids or our EL kids are making academic progress throughout the year, so that we don't wait until the end of year one, oh, another F, versus let's start the support systems now after benchmark one, or maybe not even, even before benchmark one, because we kind of know where kids are already at. If you're not already taking, grade level math or grade level whatever that may be, we know that you're not, your chances, or that achievement gap is wider for you.
Sure.
So then can we start to address those and calling some of those metrics out to ensure that, hey, math task scores for African American groups will be, 20%, and we're going to move it 5% each year. So we are holding everyone accountable to ensuring that students are making academic gains.
Yeah, and you're gonna see that for sure with the math, with the Carnegie Learning Math, and the work that we're gonna do this upcoming year. And Torrin, if you're still there, I know Torrin is doing work with English and a reading inventory. So I don't know if Torrin is available to comment a little bit more with that. I know our principals were asking for some of this work, and Torrin has been working in this area. So hand it off to Torrin.
So the plan next year is to give the HMH reading inventory 3 times per year to ascertain what level our kids read at. It'll provide us with a Lexile level that can be translated into a grade level. And that's extremely important as we look at college and career readiness. There are a lot of careers that kids want to go into, but they don't understand what level you need to read at in order to access that career. And so next year, we're going to begin gathering that data, and we will do it 3 times a year. We will disaggregate it, and we will create a plan to move forward to see if we need deeper reading interventions for our students.
Is there a recommendation to add any verbiage to that desired outcome? Is that what you're asking to, as progress is measured throughout the year on a quarterly basis or semesterly, or is that what you're asking for?
No, I was just thinking more in terms of calling, some of these subgroups out. I know that these funds in the LCAP are more, designated for, our foster youth or those socioeconomic kids, English learners. But I know that in previous years, there's been a deeper dialogue as far as our African-American kids, and what can we do for them, and how are we ensuring that they are also making academic gains, and at the same time, meeting lower suspension expulsion rates, so specifically calling kind of those metrics up for them, so that we are monitoring those groups of students also in this whole process.
We can work on the verbiage between now and Wednesday to take care of that.
And once again, Cheryl, thank you very much. I mean, you are meeting the needs of, almost 11,000 kids, so I appreciate the work that you guys have put into the LCAP. Thank you.
Thank you. We are the district meeting minutes.
Julio, do you have any questions or comments?
I think they were addressed already.
Okay. I have a few, I guess, but in terms of, if we're talking about, well, I know as all of our students come in as incoming freshmen, it's explained to them expectations, how to get through all these things, but are we meeting one-on-one with at-risk youth? Are we meeting one-on-one with our African-American kids and telling them, we believe in you, we're going to support you, and here's what you need to do, and if you're having trouble, you need to come, you need to find your person, right? It may not be your counselor, it may be the liaison, it may be your coach, it may be one of your teachers, but are we having really direct conversations with these kids so that they know, not just that Merced Union High School District is hoping this for them, but there's someone who believes in them, because I think that's half the battle is, kids need to have a champion.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, if you can get ready to comment on this. I think Costa's point about Katina and Torrin training staff, yes, that's a big piece of it. But I would say the bigger piece is what you're talking about, and is actually reaching out to families and making that first contact, and sites having that list of, you know, the top 50 most, you know, critical at-risk students. And Mr. Johnson, you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I mean, part of what Katina will do and I will help her with is the parent engagement policy for the district, and she will oversee parent engagement for each site, the plan at least. And the idea is that we need more, certain subgroups need more high touch, and African American group is one of those. So we're going to bring back the BSUs so that they have a contact person on campus. We are working with Merced College because they're having their African American students have the same barriers. So we're going to partner with them and UC Merced to get mentors for African American students, so that, you know, they could see a positive role model and work with that person. So we have a lot of things in the works, a lot of things on the whiteboard that we just have to put into action. A big piece of it is sitting down in somebody's living room and having a conversation, and that's the game plan.
Mr. Johnson, who is going to do that, or who's keeping an eye on let's say a student is not doing good, is failing?
Mm-hmm.
Who keeps track of that, and who follows up?
Well, each school has counselors. They have associate principals. So first and foremost, frontline is them. Katina and I will keep an eye on it from the district office to make sure that conversations have been had based on data. If we see kids with multiple Fs or, you know, getting in trouble or something, we will suggest certain interventions. But ultimately, I think what we really need to work on is engaging the whole family in the educational process. I mean, that's something we really, really need to work on. It's a deficit, and that's part of our focus. But I have created, I didn't create because I'm not that smart, but Claire Lopez created in Aries Analytics a simple query that when you click that button, it gives you the African American students, their English grade, their math grade, and their discipline and their progress towards graduation. So it's easy enough to find out who the kids are based on the Aries queries that we have.
With that same query, you can do any demographic, right?
Yes, sir. I have a lot of them.
So let's. I mean, the main thing should be is just any student that's failing, period. But of course, we know that there's certain groups that have higher possibilities of failing. So I see where that's very helpful. But so do we have something in writing that Counselor X knows, hey, this is what you follow. If you see this happening, you do this, this, and this. If this doesn't work, then you do this. And if this doesn't work, then you talk to Mr. Johnson? Or is that somewhere that they can follow?
Yes and no. I mean, we have what we've always done. Obviously, we know we need to standardize it and get better at it. So I would say that's in progress, but a counselor, you know, naturally knows that if a kid is not doing well in school, or if they're getting in trouble in the classroom, then, you know, the next step is to engage the family and bring them in so we can talk about what's really going on. You know, one of the things that we need to talk about moving forward, we call them student study teams. You know, you bring the nurse in, the counselor in, whoever, a parent, whoever's involved with the kid, teachers and whatnot, and we talk about what's going on with the kid. And moving forward, we need to ask questions like, Torrin, you're not doing well in English, you know, let's talk to the English teacher to see if they're differentiating the instruction so that Torrin can have access. Normally, we've always talked about the kid and what's going on with them. We need to branch that out to make sure that You know, the kids are being met with nurtured heart. The kids are being met with student-centered. The kids are being met with culturally responsive. And we're on that road. We're at a good space. We realize the gaps in our process, and some kids have fallen through those gaps. So we're in the emerging stages.
And I know we're always learning as a district, as people, and so on and so on. But so two more things, comments, please. One is there someone, I think I've asked this before. So let's say I'm counselor, I have O through Z, right? Is there somebody keeping an eye on, okay, let's see how many kids from O through Z are failing and who's their counselor and are they contacting them? How do we keep track of if the counselors are keeping track and following up with all the students that fall under their, under their, whatever it is?
Yeah, under their umbrella. That's a little out of my league. That's more of a Costas league, but the Associate Principal of Guidance should be keeping an eye on that. And counselors regularly run their list of kids who are not doing well. So they know who they are. We just got to work on what you do with them once we find out who they are.
Okay, and then the last comment is, there may be some families, parents that don't care or that cannot be there because they're working, one parent works from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. and the other one works the other time. So neither are home most of the time or they're sleeping. What do we do with kids whose family cannot or cannot be involved or is not involved?
It's up to us to step in a little further than we normally would. We act as the parent while somebody's at school. So if the parents have something going on for whatever reason, then our level of support needs to rise. We need to physically check in with that kid, create a check-in, check-out system where that kid kind of reports to somebody every day, on how they're doing. Yes, I'm at school. Yes, I've eaten breakfast. Hey, I'm a little tardy. I had this going on. We have to create a mentor for that person to check in with at the site.
I can see that's a difficult task, but we just got to keep working at it because you just mentioned something like, the kid there could have been a reason that they were late, yet the teacher maybe didn't know and so on. So anyways, it's a difficult situation, but I think we do what we can. Hopefully we improve on everything that we're doing and not let, keep as many kids on track as possible.
Yes, sir.
Do we think our counselors are prepared for kind of changed roles, if you will? I mean, I think our teachers anticipate to some extent, changes and learning loss and re-engaging kids in those challenges. Are counselors prepared to take on some new roles and new responsibilities?
I'll let Costa comment, but I'll just say what I think real quickly. I think the entire system understands what's going on here. I mean, we've all been through this together. They all know what's coming in August. The difficulty that was mentioned earlier, 7th graders that have been out of school literally for 18 months, 19, 20 months. So yes, are they 100% fully prepared? I don't know if I can say that. I can tell you DTA, the leadership that I talk to, everybody is preparing themselves for, what could be a very difficult start to the year.
And I'll just, we're looking at different curriculum. I know we've got Matt Coleman and Viviana talking to all of our administrators tomorrow for 90 minutes as part of the entire reset. It's not just a counselor duty, as Alan has mentioned. It's whole system. I think our counselors are preparing the best they can, and we're trying to provide them some better tools like curriculum that they can use. And I know in every meeting that we have with principals this week, and then today with associate principals of guidance and teaching and learning, that was emphasized. That's like the number one area that we need to focus on when we get back next year.
Are counselors getting any extra summer hours to reconnect with kids and get them back into the fold sooner?
Yeah, there's some counselors, some sites have counselors that are, have come in or coming in and working with students. Kind of highlight Livingston High School, for example. I know they're, today, and I know, working with Nicole Rose and Chaz, I know they had a really nice system built in for students, especially incoming freshmen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't think any of us can be 100% prepared, but yeah.
But planning ahead
Anticipating.
both with training and just the days and the time it takes to make contact with the at-risk group. And there's not going to be any shortage of extra hours or days this year, that's for sure.
Is there anyone on campus this summer that can help in that capacity during summer school hours? I know we've got a lot of staff there, and I know you're going to talk about summer school next, but.
Yeah, that's really, it's not just falling on the counselors right now, it's just having our teachers back. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth with what you're seeing, what, you would anticipate to see in summer school campus. And I encourage everyone to, if you haven't already, to walk on a summer school campus. There's some really, really neat things happening.
Okay. You touched on technology connectivity. What about technology addiction and what, some of the being on Zoom and never getting to your classroom and just, the dependence, like an appendage, right? The phone for kids. Are we prepared for that in the fall? Kids are used to being like this, right? On Zoom and on their phone. So are we giving teachers some extra skills to cope with that, or are we?
Cheryl, do you want to comment on that?
I think we're definitely mindful of that challenge that we'll be facing with everyone's, what I've termed in my own head as a overdependence on technology and the ease and convenience that we have enjoyed with certain functionality related to technology use. That is going to be a challenge and kind of a shift in how we do business and how we want students to be in school, and it's going to be vastly different than they have been used to the past year and a half. We are preparing trainings for staff and have an eye on that. It's going to require very clear expectations to be communicated from our staff about school culture, and this is what we expect in the classroom, and all of that kind of retraining is going to be a heavy focus the first part of the opening of the school year, for sure, just to kind of reorient kids that that was then and necessary, but now this is what we want from you, and this is how you're going to do it to be appropriate and to succeed, and meet our graduate profiles for their respective sites. So yes, we do have our eye on that. It is going to be a challenge.
Thank you. Dr. Aguilar, out of the LCAP meetings this year, was there anything strikingly new? I know you met with students for the first time, right, as part of this process. You met with parents, staff, different community groups. Is there any big new aha or something where you went, oh?
Counseling has been at the forefront for the last 4 years, with our LCAP. And I think now, especially now, that every student was impacted, I think we're going to be better equipped to provide that social emotional learning support for all it as, oh, it's not my kid, it's not my problem, doesn't impact me. But I think now, because of what we've all gone through over the last 18, 20 months, I think parents are now seeing it in their kids. Kids that, you know, you wouldn't stereotypically think, oh, it's not happening to my kid, right? You know, I don't have a problem child, quote unquote, right? So now it's impacting everyone. So just hearing from more parents, different concerns, you know, the depression, addiction, just, you know, kids that, you know, do have a good support network at home and do have the supports that are needed are being affected. So that was really alarming because, you know, it's like asking a student, do you like your school meal? Right? Oh, I can always improve, right? It's like, you know, counseling can always improve, and, you know, people always have opinions. But I think this year, everyone had an opinion. And I heard from parents that you normally would not typically think you would hear about, you know, the need for counseling. So I think we're better prepared. We've added Sierra Vista counseling, you know, at sites to help support this for next year. So I think we're in a better position, definitely, just because of all the learning and, you know, everything we've all gone through.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, then Dr. Aguilar, back to you.
I was gonna make a quick comment, Aaron.
Oh, sure.
Just want to highlight and thank all the staff who does go the extra mile, extra step, whatever, to take a student under their, you know, under their wings and really help them out. I know we're talking about all this and how can we help the students. Well, some have been helped along the way, and they'll themselves mention, thank you, Mrs. whatever, you know, Mrs. Garman or whoever that helped me get through this. And I do want to thank Ms. Johnston for taking my son under her wings, even though she wasn't her teacher. After a while, she kept on him and continued communication with him so that he would catch up and actually graduate. So I want to thank her, and then anyone else who does the same for any other student. You know, we talk about what can we do, what can the counselors do, and so on and so on. But I just want to point that out, and everyone who does that, and Ms. Johnston as well.
Awesome. Agreed.
Okay. You can bear with me here as I share my screen. All right. First off, a summer school update. Our goals for this summer were really to recover credit for students, and I did share some data with you about the seniors that you know didn't make it, qualified for waivers, and those that are going to make it because they are attending summer school. So our primary goal was credit recovery. However, our secondary goal is re-engaging students. And I think there was several comments made by our board here about ensuring that we provided not just remediation for courses, but also enrichment. So we have students that are on campuses that are attending shop classes, for example, with FFA. I know theater arts, computer graphics, and a lot of other classes where students did well in the class, but you know, want that additional time to work on some things that they did not have an opportunity to do so online. As far as personnel is concerned, I want to start here with our classified, and I know we've got Ms. Ballinger here. She and her team did a really great job. Sorry, I can't seem to get rid of this little bar here. There we go. Hiring the staff, but this gives you a glimpse of the classified staff that were hired for summer school. Where you see a 1 out of 3 or a 0 out of 2, that basically means that we hired everyone that applied. And then some. We were still looking for some positions, and I know she and her team were working diligently even up until this afternoon's, before tonight's board meeting to update and look for folks to help serve our students. So this is an updated list of our classified staff. Certificated staff, this gives you a total number. We hired every teacher that applied. We were able to use them in one capacity or another, and I'll give you an example. We had some campuses where perhaps we only had maybe 1 or 2 English teachers, but we had an overabundance of, let's say, social studies teachers that wanted to teach. So what we were able to do is we were able to divide students, provide them, assignments that they could do independently of an English teacher, but be with a social studies teacher in a classroom. So we still have a teacher of record, but we have a student still working, independently, outside of a class that is in English, for example, but still has access to that English teacher. So we got really super creative on all of our campuses to ensure that every student and every teacher that wanted to participate in summer school had the opportunity to participate. So again, you see we had a total of 229 certificated staff members, and I think, Mr. Calder, we have just a little bit over 500 certificated staff members.
That is correct, 525.
Yeah, so that's a pretty darn good percentage of certificated staff that stepped forward and said, hey, I'm here, I'm gonna do what I can to support our students. Here's the summer school attendance. So on the left-hand column, you'll see the total number that were registered. Sites reached out to parents and said, hey, we need to make sure that your child attends summer school, or students that came forward and said, hey, I want to attend summer school. I want to be in Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so's class. They're offering a program, an enrichment program. I want to go. And then you'll see the total number that are attending. These are hot off the press as of this afternoon. I will be providing you with a summer school report when we get back in August, so that we know exactly how many students attended our summer math bridge program, how many students completed, how many students recovered credit in what areas. But I will be providing that for you. So as you can see, we have roughly about 35% of our students that are attending summer school, and close to about 40% of our staff that are in the classroom with them. So really good numbers here for what we were shooting for.
Hey, Dr. Aguilar,
Yes.
what is migrant on here? Because you have their sites, but that one's a site, or what is?
Yeah, so our migrant students come from all of our campuses. And these are students that qualify specifically for migrant services. So there are certain criteria that they have to meet. For example, that they're transient in the sense that they're moving from community to community, from region to region, or state to state, depending on where work is. So there is certain criteria that they have to meet. There are about 199, again, that were asked to attend. About 90 attended, which is, about right. In a typical year, we have about 200 that we ask to attend, and we usually get about 120 that end up finishing. And the reason that is because they're migrant, right? They're moving from community to community. So they may start, but they may not finish, right? Or they may be with us, at the end of the school year, but they move because they're moving on to the next area for work.
Got it. But I actually meant, where are they at? What site are they at? Are they in all the sites?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
They're at El Capitan, yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I didn't explain it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Brett Nicholson is overseeing that program and is doing a great job.
So
Transportation provided for all these kids? For summer school, transportation?
Almost all.
Okay.
There are pockets where sites have to improvise, just because of how far they might be out and spread out, that it's not feasible. We don't have all the bus drivers we need.
Hmm.
So that was
But
my,
are there sorry, are there kids who are not able to attend summer school because they don't have a ride?
We are narrowing that list. As of Monday, I believe it was 2 schools with, 15 kids that we had to be able to get to school, and, I've not heard any more. I think they figured it out. We've got them vans, we've got extra hours to employees to go pick them up.
Thank you.
That was the question I had. So they come from all the sites to LCAP, right?
The migrant.
The migrant.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Next slide, back to basics. So as we plan for next year, keep the main thing the main thing. We want to ensure that we get back to student-centered instruction, our hands-on learning, through our career technical education programs, our project-based learning, and our universal design for learning training and opportunities for our students. Student engagement on campus, just getting our students back into clubs and athletics. I'll tell you, it has been a great escape to watch my son finish a golf season and my daughter finish a basketball season here last night. A little shout out for Atwater High School girls who won the CCC championship. My daughter is fortunate enough to be on that varsity team, which is very, very talented. And Amani Claiborne hit over 1,000 points in her career. So it was a great moment. Where the game stopped, JR called timeout, and the whole crowd just went nuts. And I'm just thinking, man, could you imagine if she did not have that opportunity to do that, her senior year? What a great disappointment. So, again, just getting there and having the students there cheering, having the boys basketball team who said, last week at Atwater High School won league, and they were there cheering on the girls. And, just having that culture and all of that back. And then they sang the alma mater. Too bad Mrs. Pickle wasn't there, because she and I were talking about this at graduation, how, gosh, we should get back to, singing the alma mater. But, the girls rushed over to the stands, and, they're there with the boys basketball team, and they sang the alma mater, and it was great. So just getting back to students engaging with different events and clubs on campus. Our essential standards work that we started, we want to make sure that we're not abandoning that work, but going back and resuscitating it. And then our associate learning for our students is going to be a big emphasis. So you see, there's not a big laundry list of things here. It's just really getting back to the basics of what we do best here in our district. And then these next 2 slides will be presented to you by Mr. Johnson.
Good evening again. So first 2 weeks of school, kind of along the same lines that we've been talking about all night long. What to expect, and welcoming kids back to brick and mortar. We're going to have to approach school with a trauma-informed eye. We're going to have to be on the lookout for kids who need extra help or who might be struggling. We definitely got to be relationship focused, and the Nurtured Heart approach will definitely help us with that. We need to start by finding out who our kids are, and that's what culturally responsive teaching is all about. It's just finding out who each kid is and how we can tie who they are and where they come from to the content to up the level of rigor. It's all about relevance per each kid. We're also going to have to take a look at explicitly teaching how to do school. Like several of you have mentioned, the kids haven't sat in those desks, they haven't sat in those rows or in those groups for a while. So I think this is a perfect time for a reset to discuss specifically the academic behaviors that you should have in order to be successful, and what behavior you should not do so you won't get in trouble, that type of thing. Next slide. Been working with the associate principals of teaching and learning, instructional coaches, and principals about the reset that Mr. Peterson talks about. What we'd like to do is just go back to the basics, go back to standards-based objectives, including student voice, and really working on connectedness to the school. Get back to the academic rigor and producing work at DLK2 level or higher, integrating the 4 C's, checking for understanding, and having closures to lessons. None of this is new for teachers, but during the pandemic, things kind of got a little wacky with checking on cameras and checking on kids and whatnot. So just getting back to some must-haves for each lesson, and sites will be working on that as we go into the fall.
All right, the next slide, Director Ballinger will be sharing a lot of our changes that are happening.
Good evening. If you take a look at the slide, you'll see that there's quite a few changes in our administration. I do want to highlight that we have 8 new to Merced Union High School District administrators. Some of them were currently teachers with us or in another role, and then others are completely new to us, and that's Jennifer Medeiros at Atwater High School, Mark Melgoza at Buhat Colony, Matt Bogart at Golden Valley, Leah Smith and Brett Nicholson at Merced High School, Stacy Cool and Erica Carty are joining the admin team from the teacher and special assignment role. And then we have Kelly Sharp. She will be joining us from outside the district. We also have Miguel Garcia and Mike Murdoch, who will be moving into a management role for us. And then lastly, in a new to the principal role, but not new to administration, is Miss Rose, who will be joining us as principal at Yosemite High School.
All right, and then lastly, challenges that we see in this upcoming year. Just again, re-engaging students, building stakeholder confidence that it's safe to be back on campus. Addressing the social emotional learning piece for all of our students, and I think we're going to need to remind ourselves that students have been out of school a long time, and addressing just behavior on what the expectations are to be on a high school campus, and how it is that the expectation is to address one another, and how we talk with one another. As to your point, Ms. Ham, we've been so accustomed to doing everything remotely that we're just going to have to really spend a lot of time nurturing the culture back on our campuses to high expectations for all of us. So, and time, I wish we had more time. There's a lot of training that we're going to need to do, from math to the social emotional learning training. So we're just going to have to be very smart with again, keep the main thing the main thing. And onboarding new teachers, we have a crew of new teachers that did not experience a regular school year, brand new teachers. And then new teachers that we've hired this year, new administrators that we saw Director Ballinger highlight. So lastly, I'll say this again, keep the main thing the main thing, on all of our campuses. So that concludes my report.
Julio, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Richard?
This is more for Director Johnson. Just real quick, so those first 2 weeks of school, getting back to basics. Will that message be sent to teachers to kind of like slow things down and connect with kids versus, I know that we're all going to be ready to go and start throwing things at kids. Hey, here we go. Okay, all right, sounds good. Thank you.
Dr. Aguilar, I loved what you said about one of the learnings is just to appreciate being with people, right? And then talking about the basketball game at Atwater and having fans, and that was really awesome the last couple of weeks of school, to be able to have not just the 1 or 2, spectators for each athlete, but to have students back on campus and doing things. I am really hopeful that students are going to come back with a new energy and new appreciation for being there, as I know that all of our staff will have, right? But anyway, are we offering training for the Nurtured Heart approach at this point across all of our campuses now?
Yes, and just speaking with our principals this year, one of the goals that we set in front of them is to double the number of staff that have gone through the Nurtured Heart approach. And I asked them, hey, is that a little too ambitious? Am I shooting my too too optimistic here. And, most of them, if not all of them, just said, no, that's not a problem. I think that, especially after this year, I think people will appreciate, going through that training, so.
Awesome. Well, welcome and congrats to all the new and promoted staff too. That's neat how we've moved people into new roles, and we'll have some new energy, I imagine. If there are no comments there, we'll move to the Employee Association comment period. And there were none from DTA, but we did receive this from CSEA Chapter 252. Good evening, President Pickle and board members, Mr. Peterson and Cabinet. This school year has come and gone with extreme challenges for our students and staff, but we made it through together. That being said, it feels that the communication with the district has deteriorated. The reason we feel this way is because CSEA was able to go on to a site not just for disciplinary reasons, but to assist with communication between administration and members. Now we've been told that if it's not disciplinary, we are not allowed to go. And when we are allowed, only one union rep and employee, the minimum for our Weingarten rights. Anything we put together to better assist the members and admin, we have been shot down on. The district is allowing cameras to be put up in the workplace. It's been said for safety. CSEA is informing you of this because we feel it's an invasion of privacy. The cameras have sound you can activate from your cell phone. District is allowing sites to have free reign on how they choose to run their school, and contract is not being followed or respected. On June 2nd, our chapter filed a grievance against the district on behalf of our members regarding Article 13. The district has made no attempt to set a meeting with CSEA. The district does what they want without any apparent consequence. In saying this, CSEA requested to meet with the district early on so we could work out the details of summer school and AB 86. Only to meet a total of 4 times, and the district didn't know anything and couldn't answer any questions. It was very confusing. Then later to find out that they were unable to discuss what took place in the back with a separate negotiation team. What was conveyed to us was the district needed certified more than they needed classified, and the deal we made was pulled off the table. This is the reason they are having difficulty filling summer positions. The district had to result in hiring students for help in the cafeteria. We are only 3 days into summer school, and 11 and in 12 months employees are still being told to do summer school duties. Administrators are telling classified that there is no difference between summer school duties and regular school duties. It is all MUHSC duties. This is a violation of our contract. The classified feel disrespected, and very rightly so, especially the cafeteria workers that have been the backbone of the district and the lowest paid. We do not feel that this is in retaliation for our speaking up about the district's blatant nepotism and cronyism, such as our students being referred to as feral cats. The district appears to be working with DTA. CSEA would love the same respect. We both play a vital role for our students and the district. The district reported on the board agenda how many teachers were retiring, but not CSEA, even though the window to fill out paperwork was December to March 31 and had closed. It was left open for the selective few they were encouraging to retire. The district is constantly freezing classified jobs, taking jobs from our bargaining unit by taking the job description, adding a little more, and making it a management job. District has agreed to pay certificated $60 an hour to teach summer school. Administrators are receiving a stipend for working summer school, but have a contract still to fulfill. Again, classified continues to be on the front line serving our students. We constantly have to fight the district for their wrongdoing. We just want them to be treated fair and with respect. We look to the board and the superintendent to be aware of the wrongs that are taking place in our district and make the necessary corrections. Enough is enough, Chapter 252. Thank you, CSEA, for your comments. At this time, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second? I second the motion. Call for a vote.
Is it up, Mr. Oh, there it is.
And so those passed 3-0.
And I'll read off the donations, Mrs. Rohrbach. Kenneth and Director Sanders, Vieira Ranch and Hay, Mike Cardoso, Bosch for Farms, Weimer Farms, Lynn and Mary McCulloch on Deck Committee, James and Judith Chance, Jeff and Ginger Chance, Michelle and Jared Pimentel, Cynthia and John Lima, Navistar, Alan Castellu, Merced River Ag Boosters Association, Precision Family Dentistry, Al Capitan Ag Boosters, Carniceria Los Cerritos, Lone Tree Almonds and Walnut, Merced Garden Club twice, Kent Christensen, Merced Running Club, Leticia Tapatio, Alan Castellu, Garden Tractor, Stanislaus Community Foundation, Merced River Ag Booster Association, Cindy Ramirez, McNamara Sports, Alan Castellu again, and Merced Rotary Club Foundation. Thank you for your contributions to MUHSC.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. At this point, we'll move to action item 12.01. Mrs. Ballinger, please.
Good evening. Education Code 45114, 45117, 45298, and 45308 is the legal basis for classified employee layoffs. The contract between CSEA and the district, Article 18, provides language to guide in the layoff process. CSEA was notified of the elimination of the affected positions on May 7th, 2021. No employees were specifically impacted because of this decision. All 4 positions are vacant. The maintenance and operations technician position is being eliminated because of a reorganization of duties within the department effective 7/1/21. The 2 network technicians are being eliminated because of a reorganization within the department effective 7/1/21. And the health service LVN is being eliminated and changed to a health aid technician effective 8/11/21. The superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 13-20, authorizing the elimination of 1 maintenance and operations technician, 2 network technicians, and 1 health services LVN position.
Is
So
there a
moved.
motion? I second the motion. Call for the vote.
The motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Mrs. Rohrbach.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger. Thank you for looking out for the district, and as people are leaving and moving on, it's beneficial to the district to do things like this.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll move to Mr. Peterson and the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Vice President Ham. First and foremost, I want to thank our board for their wisdom, their patience, and their guidance during this very difficult year, and I truly mean that. Your support enabled our entire district to weather this year and bounce back quickly the final few months. It takes a team to make good decisions. Our staff across the board could not have performed better. Both of our unions were supportive and helpful under very difficult conditions. Finally, thank you to our students, our parents, and our community for their patience and support. Thanks to all of our site principals and our site staff for executing outstanding graduations. It was so great to have all those folks on campus. It was normal, something we all yearn for. Every year I have lunch with seniors from every site. It is time very, very well spent. Our students give genuine, unfiltered feedback. There is no self-interest. They are seniors and they are leaving, so they say what's on their mind. It's pure and it's honest. I asked 3 questions. What are you most thankful for? If you had a sibling coming in as a freshman next year, what would you like to see improved? And finally, do you feel prepared for your next step in life, regardless of what that is? Overwhelmingly, even this year, the comments on staff relationships, connection, participation opportunities, many reflected on their personal growth from their freshman year to graduation. They talked about their CTE opportunities, AP program, and college credits. All of them very happy that they had room and the ability to take advantage of all of those areas. All of them talked about how much they missed in-person school and how much they felt they were cheated out of the socialization part of their senior year. From an improvement point of view, and all three of these things we will take to heart and correct the best we can, because they're not just from this year, they are familiar themes. The first one heard across every campus was an adulting class, a real class that is just about that, that is an elective that any student can take, doesn't necessarily have to be their senior year. And that is something we will get done through Curriculum Council in the fall, and then have it offered for the 22 school year. A generic capstone or a pathway that allows for personalization. Lots of kids know what they want to do, and they hop into a pathway and they get their 3 years done. In fact, the majority at least that I have talked to, appreciate that, and either we're fine with the 2-year program or the 3-year program. It doesn't work for everyone. Some people just want to jump around and experience different industries and different aspects of what we offer. So we're going to work on figuring out how that is going to affect us with the college and career indicator, which requires the 2 years, and how that would affect the capstone. That one might take a little time, but we will get there. The third one, and it's kind of a overview and goes along with the LCAP feedback from our community, is improvements in counseling. One of the major themes within that was communication between college counselors and the site counselors. And the second major theme that I heard at not all, but most campuses was a greater knowledge base of opportunities outside of California. They feel like they're very well informed on the UC system, on the CSU system in California, the junior college opportunities and private school opportunities, but didn't feel that they had the necessary access to private schools outside of California. And along with that was more of a focus on the work world and industry in our area. Not all of our kids, 25% of our kids do not go on to any school. And so those students feel a little bit left out when you go into a career center, and the career center is about the JC or the college, or instead of, hey, how many welding jobs are available at Kirby? So those were the improvements. Because this was the first class that had the real four-year experience with CTE, I dug in a little deeper. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, but as I said, there were some that wish they could jump around and experience as many programs as possible rather than locking in. Finally, I asked 2 questions about this year. And the overwhelming response to the learning loss question was two-pronged. And I asked if they understood what learning loss is. And some sites I had to explain it, some sites they explained it to me. The first part was yes, we lost socially. We lost being in class, being with our peers and being with our teacher. But at the majority of sites, not all sites, they said, no, we did not lose academically. We still feel prepared. What we lost, we gained through other applications and the use of technology and the grit required to get through a very, very challenging year. So I thought that was interesting. I asked them what staff needed to be prepared for next year. We will have ninth graders that have not been in school since the 7th grade. And after they chuckled, because they know what that means, they said that we need to have very clear expectations and be really patient. And I think you saw that naturally tonight in the presentations. They shared very clear concern for 9th and 10th graders. Many brothers and sisters and saw it coming. So, you know, we have a strong plan for the start of the year and summer school, which you were updated on. Across the board, services have been added, everything from adding extra sections to reduce class sizes, to the increased social emotional staff. If we need more assistance in areas, we are prepared to do that. We are going to need to be very nimble and flexible next year. And finally, we have our final meeting next week. We will have a couple of closed session items and a report or two, and we will take action on the budget and LCAP. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. All right, it's time for communication and any future agenda requests. Mr. Lopez, would you like to start?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank everyone, you know, from our transportation, food, teachers, staff, facilities, maintenance operations, obviously our leadership cabinet for what started off as a not so great year, ended up somewhat successful year. You know, to cap it off with our graduations, UHAC graduation was phenomenal. I thought, you know, 45-minute sessions and, you know, just to see everybody kind of back, you know, I thought it was fantastic. I attended several sporting events. And like you mentioned, Mrs. Ham, just to see people out and about, you know, enjoying what was happening before our eyes after what could have been nothing. And the last several months of school, we made it work for kids. So I know a lot of work behind the scenes that happened, and obviously on your behalf, Mr. Peterson, and just getting that ball rolling and, you know, just getting kids back in the mix of things. You know, where athletics, extracurriculars, our FFA programs, our high and low showcase, and the job that Mr. Gossen just continues to just to do there, to the level of LCAP work and everything else that Dr. Aguilar and has been doing, you know, to the budget with Dr. Weimer. So just a lot of work that still has to be done, was done, and you know, and like I say, I thought we ended it successfully. I did attend the GBHS senior interviews, and just you know, piggyback on Mr. Peterson's comment, I didn't see much learning loss. You know, these kids were prepared. Their responses to the answers that they were giving me, I was floored. You know, these kids performed. You know, amidst these past, you know, 19, 20 months of not really being in a normal school setting. I was very, very impressed with their interviews. I did have a virtual meeting with the apprentice people, the creating apprenticeship opportunities of Central Valley, and they like to have a dialogue as far as, you know, what we can do to expand, you know, services and resources for kids that may not go into higher learning.
And,
you know,
and that's an association? Or?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and they had, I think, the majority of the board members from the Central Valley attend this virtual meeting just to get the board's kind of perspective and what we can do for kids.
Are you aware of that?
I'm not.
I'll forward you the
Yeah,
email. I'll forward you the
That's
email.
awesome.
And then, obviously, I also participated in the 6-hour Saturday session of, the Nurture Heart approach. And Viviana Barajas did a fantastic job, you know, I think it's
She's great.
it's the right way to, or the right thing to do for our kids as we transition back into full session. And then just one last thing, more like for, I guess, Mr. Calderon or even you, Mr. Peterson, what can we do to continue to improve on the communications with our CSEA membership, as was alluded to in their comments to us? You know, obviously, they feel we have a strong communication or open lines with DCA, so what can we do to improve on that with them?
We'll strategize on that.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you, Ms. Ham.
Thank you. Julio, are you still there? Did we lose you?
Someone's on the phone there.
That's here. I think
No, we
Julio's
lost him.
maybe dropped off all of a sudden. Well, I echo a lot of the same sentiments. I mean, I'm so proud of our district and everything that was accomplished by our team, right? I mean, absolutely every single person went into making not only this year a success, but we're prepared for the fall. I mean, I really appreciated the presentations today and your patience with our questions and concerns, and I have no reservations about, you know, kids coming back in the fall. It sounds like everyone's ready to go, and we'll be nimble and patient and figure out what services we don't have and fill the voids as we need to. So thank you for that. I mean, no one ever put their head in the sand and said, I can't do this, or we can't, or we won't. And that's not the case in every district. So, you know, thank you.
There were a few days.
I know, we all had days. I know, all of us. And on a personal note, because I had a senior in my household and know lots of seniors, I mean, yeah, that, you know, they had a year that wasn't awesome, but from March to June, man, they did everything, and I don't think they feel bad about it at all. And they had a graduation and some different things that were unique to their class that will probably, hopefully, never be repeated, right? But they feel special because of it, and so just a huge shout out to every single campus that made our seniors feel special, and thank you for having athletics and band and all of the different extracurriculars going, because it made a huge difference. And, you know, hopefully kids are just rolling through the summer, and it was really encouraging to see the summer school numbers. So thank you. We are tonight without masks on in the boardroom because we're all vaccinated. We're extremely spaced out as well. But hopefully before long, we'll be back to having in-person open public meetings as well. I don't know.
August is the plan.
Please keep getting vaccinated, Merced County, so we can be back in school in the fall without masks and all of that good stuff. So I don't think I have any other.
Just one last thing, Aaron.
Yes, for sure.
Obviously, on behalf of the board and obviously our district, I want to, keep our thoughts and prayers for both Mrs. Cope and for Mr. Coleman as they're going through their health issues. So I know Mr. Coleman was going to start, I think, this week, and I'm not sure what Mrs. Cope's status was, but I think she was.
Yeah, I think she is heading to Missouri within the week, and hopefully soon after.
Yes.
That's encouraging. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we will adjourn our meeting at 7:49.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thanks,
Ham.
everyone.
Sam.